Hi, I'm Trent Albers, Communications Manager for the City of Papillion, and I'm here with Papillion Fire Chief Bill Bowes. Recently, we'd seen discussions online about how the Papillion Fire Department uses mutual aid, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to give you a better understanding of how mutual aid works, what it is, and how often the department utilizes it and provides it to other communities. So Chief, what is mutual aid?
That's a really good question because the average person won't think about that at all. But really, we can take mutual aid as a general term is one fire department helping another fire department. Now, police have very similar things as well, public works to some extent. So it's really a sharing of resources. It's hard for any community to staff and be adequately prepared for every circumstance they may fit. And if we focus in on the fire department, a multi-casualty accident where it might be a school bus that's involved in an accident and you have 30 children that might be injured. No one fire department in this area can handle that on their own. So we can't staff for something like that. We can't staff for the what if this happens type of scenarios. So mutual aid is there. So if one department's resources are being utilized in an incident and they need more help at that incident, then we can call on a neighboring fire department to send some resources to help out with that. So that's really the idea behind mutual aid.
How does mutual aid work? When do you decide that you need to call in another department?
All sorts of different situations because every situation is going to be unique. A case for us might be we have two ambulances that cover our territory. So Papillion, La Vista, and the area generally south. If both those ambulances are busy on separate calls and a third call comes in requiring another ambulance or medic unit, then we would call a neighboring fire department to send an ambulance to help us with that. That's probably the most common example. A different example would be a 2 or 3 car collision where there are multiple parties injured. Our two ambulances would respond to that. If there's another patient or patients that we can't transport, then we would call in another neighboring department to help out with that.
So how often do we receive mutual aid and how often do we provide mutual aid?
If we look at the last 12-month period, which is just a nice number to look at, we received mutual aid from other departments about 150 times, just a little bit less than that. We gave mutual aid to other departments right about 110 times.
Okay.
So it's a fairly even swap, and the idea with mutual aid is that it's a give and take on both sides. I give some, you will give some, and we'll come out about even in the end.
How often on a normal week is mutual aid used?
So 150 times over 12 months, that's about 12 and a half per month.
Okay.
So a couple times a week, 3 times a week maybe.
Okay.
If we look at a week's calls, say somewhere 75 to 80 calls per week is what we get, and maybe 3 of those we would need mutual help on. So it really is a pretty small percentage overall.
So there's also different types of mutual aid.
Right. We've been kind of informally referring to mutual aid by request. That's one of the categories of mutual aid that we have, which is I need help right now, so I'm going to ask Bellevue to send over whatever resource we might need. And then it's up to Bellevue to say, yes, I can spare that resource, or no, I can't right now. If they can't, then I'll go to somebody else. But if they can, that's great, I have the help on the way. So that's for an instance that's occurring right now. I have the ability to ask any of our neighboring departments for the resources we might need. So that's mutual aid by request. Automatic mutual aid, we exercise most commonly with Bellevue on the eastern end of our response territory, which is, generally speaking, east of 60th Street, south of Highway 370. In fact, down around 48th and Capehart, there's a lot of new development going on down there. That's our fire district, but Bellevue is by far closer to that. So Bellevue has agreed to an automatic mutual aid agreement where if a call comes in for that area, then they will automatically respond along with a fire truck or an ambulance from our stations as well. So they are helping us cover our own territory. The kind of beauty of that is ultimately all those neighborhoods down there are going to be part of the city of Bellevue, and Bellevue is going to cover them anyway. So they're getting to know the neighborhoods that are going to be coming under their jurisdiction at some point in the not too distant future. So it's a great way of sharing the resources that way. We had talked earlier about numbers and how we've received in the last 12 months about 150 mutual aids, and we've given about 110. If we toss out the automatic aid with Bellevue, then those numbers really turn around. We'll only have received about 90 mutual aid calls instead of the 150. So without that automatic aid, we are giving more than we're receiving on mutual aid by request.
How does a mutual aid agreement make the best use of tax dollars for a fire department?
Because we always want to be conservative in spending taxpayer dollars and budgeted monies. We know due to the nature of our business that calls are very irregular. They don't really fit any patterns. We can't say tomorrow is likely to be a busy day where today is going to be a quiet day. It's just much more random than that. So we can't staff, we can't have manpower and equipment ready for every available instance that might happen for that unique large car accident, for that unique large fire. So we staff for the most likely call volume that we'll have plus a little bit. But when we get plus a lot and our resources are taxed, then we're going to have to rely on others to help. And we're in a great situation here in the metro area because we have Omaha to our north, which has a lot of resources that are available. They get very busy, but they have a lot of resources. We have Bellevue to our east, who is a very similar sized fire department as ours. They're going to be available, and we have 3 really good volunteer fire departments, Ralston, Springfield, and Gretna, right around us, that have resources that are available for us as well. So we're really in a good place where we don't have to spend all the money to staff and equip for those unusual instances because we know we're in a great neighborhood here where we can share resources with one another. And everything I said about Papillion is equally true for all the other communities around. So we can all call on each other for help when we need it.
So tell me about how these mutual aid partnerships started. What's the history behind them?
So it's kind of exciting from our perspective because Papillion was one of the first fire departments involved in mutual aid. Back in the 1940s, there was a large warehouse fire in Millard that the Millard Fire Department was responsible for. Quickly realized it was out of control for them, and they needed additional resources, so they called Papillion and Ralston to help out with that. And then after that, people started to look at, why don't we help each other more often? So an association called the Tri-Mutual Aid Association, Millard, Ralston, and Papillion formed. And then since then, it's grown to cover 5 counties and somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 fire departments are all part of a Tri-Mutual Aid pact. So any one of us can ask anybody else for help, and if they're able to provide that help, they will. And that help is always given at no charge. There's no cost to the department requesting the mutual aid assistance. So it's a great association. It allows us to share resources. There are just all kinds of benefits to it.
And obviously, at the end of the day, it protects our residents here at home, and we're able to offer that protection to other communities as well.
Exactly. Yep, that's a good way of summing it up.